Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Our Love Journey, and we are still at it in the month of October.
Yeah, it's still the month of talking about mental health, and I think we've covered some really key aspects.
Yeah.
But I think today's one is one that affects everyone, and I'm actually really excited to talk about it because it's something that we've personally been speaking about a lot.
Yeah.
In through our journey as a married couple and as friends.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And guys, by the way, Brendan's recovering from a flu.
Yeah, guys, if I sound a bit weird today, it's because I'm recovering, but I'm feeling really good.
Yeah.
It's the kids. These kids.
What do you call it? Like crash flu is the absolute.
It's hectic.
pit.
It only comes for like a week and then it's gone. But that week,
It's just like how
annoying.
yeah. Luckily this time I'm safe. I didn't get it because man's
that's why we are social distancing.
Yeah, I'm taking my supplements, taking my vitamins. I've been taking your vitamins.
I've been trying.
Exactly.
Have the last 18 months left you feeling permanently tired? Are you feeling down for reasons you just can't explain? Do you dismiss these feelings saying that it's just life? Join a series of wellness conversations in the circle with Salal, where we discuss the impacts of stress on everyday life. We unpack mental health awareness and ways to combat the effects of stress. Visit www.salal.co.za. Mind, body, Salal.
Okay, let's get into this week's review. And this one is from Mai. And he gave us a 5-star. And the review says, Our Love Journey, the podcast. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for being so vulnerable. Taking care of one's mental health in a relationship is a gift to your partner. Love that. Because being better for self is for the betterment of the relationship. Thank you for all you are doing through the podcast. This is truly God's work.
Yeah, look, guys, we so honored to get to do this, to have this platform where we can really share with you guys. So for us, it's always an honor. And I think for as long as we feel like we're adding value, we'll continue to have these podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be it for entertainment or information
Laughter.
or knowledge, whatever, education, laughter, just for everything. It's really a holistic podcast.
Yeah. And this week's episode, it was actually so hard planning for it because I'm just like, where do we even start?
Yeah.
We started in the first week talking about mental health and relationships. We obviously spoke about our contributions and just individually what we bring to the relationship and how that affects us.
Yeah.
And then last week we spoke about our careers. I saw some people commenting. I was even feeling the same way about corporate. So it's interesting to actually see that we all kind of struggle the same way. And this week we're talking about how childhood traumas affect us.
Sure.
I want to start by reading a definition that I found online about how we can actually define what childhood traumas are. And here's the definition. Childhood trauma is the experience of an event by a child that is emotionally painful or distressful, which often results in lasting mental and physical effects. And the reason why I wanted to start by reading this is because I think before we used to think of childhood trauma as this big thing, but I think the more we're growing or learning about mental health, we actually realize that childhood trauma doesn't have to be this massive thing. In fact,
it doesn't have to be a massive event.
It doesn't have to be a massive event. In fact, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I can't remember which one. And they were talking about, I think it's Brene Brown. She was talking about pain. And she says the problem is that we think we think our pain is lesser than, therefore we cannot acknowledge it. Sure. So for example, maybe I hurt my pinky toe, but you had surgery, right? So just because yours seems more significant or is more apparent or is more painful, then I will ignore my pinky, not want to talk about my pinky, not want to acknowledge what's going on in my pinky because, oh no, Brendan has surgery. So essentially, we all just now trying to do away and not dealing with our pain because someone else is feeling more pain.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great way to explain it. And I think a lot of us go through life feeling like that.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's almost like it's shunned upon to be vulnerable,
Absolutely.
to feel pain.
Yeah.
Like it's this thing where like you encouraged to just, continue,
slap a bandage, keep it moving.
just keep it moving. And it's like a lot of times those are signals, I guess, that you get given by life to say, hey, you have issues, like
Yeah.
you have an issue, you have a problem that maybe you should look into. But because, like you said, it's not this big jarring injury.
Yeah. Then you ignore
It's so easy to just ignore it, and that's what childhood traumas, are a lot of times. And then they become these massive things. Like, I guess if you don't treat that toe, in 10 years time, it's a fungus that's infected your whole leg.
Absolutely.
And now you live your life feeling like this is normal, this is who you are.
and
Kanti,
it's
this could
not.
have been treated.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, I always find it weird, and I've tried to stop. Whenever you say, like, yeah, well, this is who I am, like, a lot of times it's us covering up for issues that we don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
We don't want to deal with that particular flaw in our
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
And we don't want to find what's the root cause. Why do
Sure.
I act like that? Why
don't
do I
wanna
get
deal
so
with it.
triggered
Yeah.
about something? It's who I am. I'm just aggressive, or
Sure.
I'm sensitive, or I'm emotional. Yes, you can be those things, but sometimes it can be that it's being triggered by some event that happened in
when
the
you were
past.
a child. Yeah. I was actually just thinking the other day, and I was reading something about being parents who actually apologize. And this, I guess, because we share personal stories. So we grew up, my parents were very strict. My mom was quite strict. And obviously,
Really? Your mom?
my mom.
The same?
That's why. Unomsa. That's why every time I
same
look
Nomsa.
at, I know, every time I look at my mom and our
Can't
kids, I'm just like, how?
Who's this woman?
Exactly. And she was very strict. For me, I think it worked for me because I am quite militant. So that style of parenting, I think, really worked well for me. But we have a group, like an iMessage group with my mom and my sister. And we're just chatting. And I guess as an adult who's decided to be a conscious parent, she actually sent us a message and said, hey, girls, I just want to let you know that I'm sorry.
Sure.
And that was the
Yeah, I
first
remember you
time.
told me about
Yeah, and it was the first time I heard my mom apologize, and I'm sure maybe she's apologized before, but where actually recognized that she sat back and she decided to think, and she's like, I'm sorry that growing up I shouted so much. I didn't know what I was doing. I was under pressure and I was just doing my best. And it meant so much, and it's made me such a conscious parent that I apologize to my daughter. And it doesn't make me a weak parent or someone who's being ruled by their child. It's just recognizing that we're dealing with a lot. And sometimes the
We
truth
do
is
act out of
our
character.
kids take the fall, you know. But the good thing is that we apologize so that we don't put on childhood traumas onto our children.
And so that they know that even though you've said that, or you've shouted at them, or you've acted in a way that's not right,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it's okay.
Yes, yeah.
Because sometimes if you just move on, if you shout at your kid like in a way that's really not the right way, or you
Yeah.
do something that you shouldn't be doing,
Yeah.
and you just move on, for them it's like, I
okay,
guess
this
when
is
you're
what we
older,
do.
that's what you can do.
Yeah, that's
like
what
you
you
can
do.
do that at a certain stage.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting about what you were talking about with your mom and how you were raised and
Yeah.
stuff is I realize that even in our own kids, right?
Yeah.
Like kids are so different that like I don't think there's one style of parenting that really can just
Absolutely.
work for everyone. Because
Yeah.
I see it with Uzani.
Yeah.
Like Zani does not like being shouted at.
Yeah. You can
Like,
see he actually gets
He gets so hurt.
and
Like-
very emotional. Yeah.
Like he literally turns around and walks away.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful. Like he knows how to walk away. But I realize that, I mean, even between us too, like tough love doesn't work for everyone.
yeah. It
You know
works
what I
for
mean?
me, but it doesn't work for you.
It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I see myself in that. I
Yeah.
see that pain, and I'm like, yeah, I don't like it when someone is super harsh
Yeah.
on me.
Yeah.
Like I just don't see the point
Yeah.
ever.
Whereas
to be
Nuri
like that.
is
Whereas Nuri can take it.
she can take it. She acts differently.
Yeah, Nuri really can take it, and Nuri stands up for herself.
Yeah.
Like Nuri will say, "You shouting, you being loud."
Yeah, you
like
being
when
loud.
you know what I mean. Where
Yeah.
Zani will just like walk away
And be very-
and
yeah.
it's like you take those cues from your own kids, and you realize that if I keep enforcing, or personally, I feel like if I keep enforcing this manner of parenting onto my son, who does not
Who's
like
not
it,
receptive of
who does
that.
not receive it well, I'm not giving him the lesson.
You're not being a conscious parent.
I'm
you
not
just
being conscious, and I'm not taking the
blindly
cues.
try. Yeah.
I'm just enforcing myself.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's something to say, to be said, that a lot of there wasn't a lot of information out there when we were being brought up. So naturally, I think our generation, even the generation before us, even more so, like our parents, the way they were raised, they weren't given the tools to be sensitive
or conscious parents.
Conscious to kids.
Yeah.
You know?
I just wanted to touch on something, and I listen to a lot of stuff, so it's always hard to reference. But I was listening to something, and they were talking about actually conscious parenting and as Black people. And someone said, and the reason, I think it was Deval and Kadeen, and they were, it was a similar conversation about childhood traumas. And he grew up where they used to just beat them up, and their grandmother would just beat them up, and that was kind of love. And I think as an adult, he went and he spoke to grandmother, and he was like, "Grandma, why is that all you do?" And he said, "You need to remember that as Black women or as Black parents, we had to protect you from the white man." Basically. So my job as your parent is to make sure that you don't act out of character. You behave yourself so that you don't get killed out there. Those are some of the things that we need to consider when looking at childhood traumas, because it's so easy to say, yeah, my mom did this, my dad did this, or my...
But you have to look at the
But
time.
you have to look at the time, the bigger picture. What experiences did they have? For example, like I'd like to think my mom was also shaped by her upbringing, and my grandmother, who practically raised herself, now has to raise another child. Can you understand how that cycle continues? And if there's no information out there, it's how do people heal and how do they do better?
That's so good. And you're right, because like they are just doing the best they can with the information that they have. But also I think, what I learned personally, there's no perfect childhood. Even in a childhood being perfect, you are missing out on certain hardships of life that would strengthen you. So there's really no like vacuum that you can grow that's just going to keep you safe, protected from everything. But what I realized is that, like for instance, with me, my parents really believed in education. Like a lot of parents who believe in education as being the key to success. And that is what was success for them. In their time, influencing wasn't a career.
No.
Being a musician was far-fetched. Just because, the things you'd have to sing about, really, you'd have to be singing about the struggle. To really make an impact. Like you just couldn't be.
It was for the elite.
Look, and you had to go, like you had to be sure, which is, this is what you want to do, you know, because, you'd face exile and all that stuff. And so when it was time for me to pick a career, it was not the right environment in a way that I would have liked, but I think I knew what was informing that environment. And therefore I took a stand on my own to say, no, I'm still gonna do this because I understand that what you're doing is out of love, but I'm going to kind of take control of this phase. And I think to myself, how many people are in those positions where you have to choose between an authority that you respect and a decision that feels right to you.
Your calling, your vision.
And I think a lot of times it's doing, the former that kind of leads to that resentment, that childhood trauma building up. Because you get to a point in your life where your voice is the loudest voice, and you realize that you're not where you wanted to be. You're not living the life that you're supposed to live because you never listen to yourself, right? So I think part of growth is opening up to yourself and realizing, okay, what is my circumstance? Where do I stand? Where do I fit? And for me, that was the biggest question I had to ask myself when I was kind of becoming an adult is, what's realistic for me? It wasn't realistic for me to say, I can create a music career out of nothing. I needed something, right? And that something was a competition show where I knew this is something I can attain. It's attainable. I can do it and I can create something. And even though I didn't have as much support as I wanted to, and look, support is relative. I did have support in a sense that once the ball started to move, the support was there. But it's that initial push where, where you don't know. And I'm going to finish now. But I was listening to a story of an actor who says he told his mom that he wanted to be an actor, he wanted to move to New York or whatever. And his mom, the response was actually so beautiful. His mom said, that's fine. Just promise me, this was the one condition. She said, I'll support you. Just promise me that when after 2 or 3 years, if things aren't looking up for you, that you will make the decision to come back and I won't be the one to have to kill your dream.
Sure.
Is what she said.
Wow.
I won't be the one to kill your dream.
Wow.
You will instead eject yourself from that situation.
Wow.
And I thought, wow,
That's beautiful.
that's a beautiful
courage.
that's a beautiful way
vulnerability.
to parent, to say, to
parent,
give
yeah.
someone leeway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
margin for error. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times we need that
Yeah.
because chasing your dream is scary.
Yeah.
And if you feel like there is no net, a lot of people won't make the jump.
Yeah, that's
but if
true.
you give someone a little bit of a net,
Then they
and
will.
funny enough, the guy, he says after 3 years, he called his mom and he said, Mom, it's not working. And she was the one who said, look, just give it until the end of the year.
Wow. Yeah.
And just before that, like, he got his breakthrough and things changed. And so it's just funny how sometimes your decisions or the way you parent a child, just one moment can really have such
Change-
a
Huge
lifelong
yeah.
impact.
Good or bad. And I think while you're touching on that, I think because we can make better decisions, we're more informed. I think we need to shift from the idea that parenting is about controlling our children, molding them into what we want them to be. Someone asked me a question and said, what qualities do I pray for in my kids? And Nuri. And I actually thought about it, that I don't pray for any qualities, but I pray that she lives in her God-given purpose,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. Because it might not be suitable for me. And that essentially, that's not my position. My position is to shape her and to raise her in a way that she can hear directly from God, that she can trust her gut, that she can trust her own intuition and make good decisions for her. The problem comes when we try and mold children into our own little ideas.
Sure. And how often do we do that?
A lot of times. And so I want to kind of go into what could cause trauma. And the breakdown of our introduction was for me to get to a point that just because you haven't been raped or physically abused or had a bottle thrown at you does not mean that whatever trauma you've experienced or whatever hurt you or shaped the kind of person you are is invalid. Everything is valid, whatever event. It could be something good for me, but if it has affected you in a negative way, if a certain event occurred and has shifted your thinking or your way of acting, then we need to learn to acknowledge that, accept that, and then deal with it.
Yeah.
Some of the things that could cause trauma, I think I'll read them through and then you can add on to if you want to. Neglect, emotional neglect, being left alone by your parents, being abandoned by your mom, your dad, or family, just being neglected is something that could cause trauma. Abandonment, I think it goes hand in hand. Physical abuse, this could be bottles, hiding.
This is one that's, I think, very
This one's
common.
very common and very, very broad. Then there's sexual abuse. This one's also broad. There's actual rape. There's sexual. There's molesting. There's just even someone touching you inappropriately. It could be a once-off thing where someone touched your thigh and it seems like it's nothing, but it is something. If someone violates your body,
And it wasn't okay.
touches you, it's not okay. Divorcing parents or parents who aren't together. And also substance abuse, growing up in environments where there's alcohol, there's drugs, there's whatever substances that were used as coping mechanisms in the home.
Yeah, I think a lot of these are quite common. I think also there's a lot of, like by physical abuse, I don't know if we'd add verbal abuse as well.
Verbal abuse, that's important.
I think if you grow up and you are like a lot of people,
Yeah.
like I grew up, like I was always a chubby child.
Yeah,
And that leaves a trauma for sure.
absolutely.
Because you can never look at yourself in a way that is true.
It affects your self-esteem.
I think
yeah.
a lot of people actually go through that
Yeah.
because it's that thing, like you look at pictures from like 5 years ago and you know that when you took that picture, you were super insecure.
Yeah, but you
felt
look at it
fat,
now
and then
and
you
you're
look at
just
it and you're like, how almost nigga slender.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, those ideas are like, because when I look back, like honestly, I really was not that chubby.
yeah.
I was never more than a size 32 in high school, at the most maybe a 34, but that's not it's not Ibile 34, I'm pushing it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Yet I always felt that I was this big child.
Sure.
And I'm like, who says?
Yeah, who
what's
decides that?
the metrics for that? Like,
Yeah.
where do you cross over and all of a sudden now you're big, now you associate as big, and now you're small? And it's like things like that. Then you grow up and it's like it stays with you.
Yeah, it
and
does.
you never ever find peace. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's one of those things where I guess what makes us happy or where you find peace is when you have balance. So if you are too much to the right or too much to the left, you're gonna always lack that peace. So
Yeah.
whether you are now like
An
ripped,
extremely ripped.
you understand? It's like you always chasing something more than what you should
Something
have.
that doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
And that's actually how we deal. So there's always a parable that's always told. Guti, like, okay, if a child, for example, the two boys being raised by the same father, one drinks, the father drinks. Either one child will probably be an extreme alcoholic, and the other one will won't drink at all. And that is like the two extreme two choices. Yeah, and that's how we deal with a lot of traumas or things that have happened. If people didn't give you attention, then you become an attention seeker. Everywhere you go, people must notice that you're there. You become extra loud. There's just different ways that we react or try to make up for things that have affected us as children.
Sure, so good. And I think for me, what really, really changed my trajectory as a human being, I think, is when I stopped looking at life as black or white.
That's it.
And realizing that it doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah,
it can be both.
Just be, yeah.
It can really be both.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it is both.
Yeah.
And it's like if you just always looking to either be one side or another side, like you never find the answer because the coin always has two sides.
Yeah. So I just want to go through some symptoms of childhood trauma in adults, and then I think I'll share one of mine. Some symptoms that you can find in yourself are anger. And then again, it doesn't have to be explosive where you're just beating everybody up. But if you get into moments of just being angry for no reason, that is something to look at. Unresponsiveness. We sometimes call it lazy. The one person who doesn't want to do anything. They just want to be on the couch, no motivation. They're not responding to life. Something deeper could have happened and should be looked at. Anxiety, not being able to just do things freely, but everything has to be this big decision where you have to talk yourself into it. And, anxiety differs for different people. Then there's emotional outbursts, not being emotionally stable, pretty much. So when something happens, you always have an outburst. You always have a big reaction. You cannot control your emotion. And then there's depression, which is obviously quite a large, a broad word as well. And then there's panic attacks. For me, one that I wanted to add is control. I think I shared last year about being sexually abused, right? And when I went to therapy, when we start, and that's the nice thing about therapy, it's not that they're telling you they aren't the answers, is that you basically unpack. You get to unpack and you kind of get to realize what has happened. And then you kind of put the pieces together, right? The more you talk. And we kind of came to a place where most people who've actually been sexually abused or sexually harassed have this control thing. Because it's almost like your body decides right now that nobody will ever make me do something I don't want to do ever again. And so you go through life, and it's even in small things where you constantly want to be the one in control. You need to be in charge so that you're not taken advantage of again, right? So you always have to be one step ahead. You always have to protect. You always have to be in control of the environment, because one incident took away your control or your power.
Sure. It's a great thing to recognize that, you are acting out that way. Because I think just being aware.
I think that because
awareness is
the key.
Yeah.
And we spoke about this the other day. I think we were asking each other, do you actually heal from childhood trauma? And I believe we came to the conclusion that I don't really think you heal from it. And I think I spoke to Amanda about this as well. You don't really heal from it. You become aware and you get better at it. Yeah. And it's just like almost like losing someone. It's not that you just all of a sudden forget and life is glad. It's just you learn to live with that, and your perspective, depending on the work you do, your perspective on things changes. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna go into a few points now, but I just think to kind of round it up about childhood traumas, we all have things that have happened to us or have been said to us or that we've experienced, and some of us think, it's not a big deal, but I think I'm kind of here to affirm that it is a big deal. It is a big deal to you. And it doesn't have to be confirmed by anybody else. And you owe it to yourself to heal. You owe it to yourself to do the work. You owe it to yourself to confront it, however that looks like. So it's just important that we all do our inner work. A relationship will put a flashlight onto your issues.
It really would, because it's basically someone else who's mirroring how you are acting.
So some of us think, when I get married, when you get married, that's when those traumas are just going to be like, really yep, that's what's happened to me. So, especially I think when you're single, young, do the work, go to therapy, read articles, just find ways to deal. Listen to podcasts, take your supplements. I mean, for some people, anxiety is kind of just part of it. You were probably physically beaten every time you opened your mouth at home. You have anxiety all the time. Take supplements, go see a doctor. Let's find ways to work with what life has unfortunately dealt us. And then I'm going to read another few things of what childhood trauma can look like. It's kind of to summarize everything, but some few things: low sense of self-worth when you're feeling insecure, lack of confidence, something to look at, always fearing what might happen next, resisting positive change. That's something we don't consider, that there's people who are always resisting positive change. They just can't accept it. Tolerating abusive behaviors from others. That is a huge red light. Difficulty standing up for yourself and asserting boundaries. Sure. And lastly, codependency in relationship. And I think for my closing statement, we're obviously not experts at these conversations. We're not trained psychologists. All we can do is share information that we've consumed, our own experiences, and what we're trying to do is not diagnose, but rather start the conversation and have people acknowledge what's happening. And that is just through being vulnerable and sharing our stories.
Yeah, I think that's really it. I mean, for us, we can only be honest about what we've experienced or what we know.
Yeah.
And, if it helps you, great. But it's by no means like some sort of guide to this is how you deal with stuff. We're, like Mpumi said, we're not experts. But I thought what's interesting is there's this show we've been watching on Netflix called Made.
Oh my.
Which I think is a great example of childhood traumas.
Yeah.
So if you do get the chance, please watch the show Made and just watch the cycles. Because that's what childhood traumas are. It's cycles.
In church, we call it generational curses.
Yes, shackles. Shackles.
Yeah.
So just watch these cycles, these reoccurring cycles. Sometimes abantu abahlanyi. Like, I think this idea that we think abantu bayahanya.
Or people just are trying to sabotage themselves.
Like, no one is trying to. When people go into reoccurring cycles, a lot of times it is there is something there. There's something that is causing that. There is, like you said, all these things, these lack of self-worth, codependency.
They're informing.
Like they
inform everyday decisions.
And they're also informed by their experiences. Yes. They're reacting in that way because of how they've had things react. And I thought the show Made really shows a really great depiction. It's very painful to watch.
Yeah.
I personally was really hurt by it, but it's such a true reflection of what childhood traumas can look like. We haven't finished it.
No,
so
I'm
I
still
don't know
watching
if there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
I hope so.
But we've gotten so far. And I've just,
And what's interesting for me is how every time, and this is, I guess it goes to the resisting positive change, is every time, like, we can all see, like, when we're watching that, just take this opportunity, just leave that alone, use
something can look, and this is, I guess, sometimes why we feel like we can I don't know, man. Like we hurt people because we stand outside and we look at it from the outside.
We don't know the full
and
pictures.
we think, man, just
it's
do
easy,
that.
Just do that.
Like the same way we watch soccer and we're like, why am I like soccer? We, all of a sudden now we are coaches.
Until you get in the field.
And it's like when you're in the field, you don't see those options.
Completely different.
It does not look like that because you don't have that vantage point. You in it.
You're in it.
So you just seeing what you're seeing. And it's like we really do need to be a lot more empathetic as a human race. I really think empathy is the key to a peaceful society. But I mean, empathy can only come by experience.
I love how you mentioned reference made because I feel like it touches on so much that we've spoken about. Now,
guys,
I'm just thinking of Regina, who's the rich woman, and then there's Alex. Is her name Alex?
Yes.
Her name's Alex, who's obviously poor, and they both have issues, and the issues are completely different, but they don't cancel. Are valid. They don't cancel out each other.
That's what you were saying, Guti. Like just because your toe hurts and my heart is in
doesn't
pieces,
take away my pain.
It doesn't change the fact that you are in pain too.
Still in
you know,
pain,
and sometimes that pain might hurt. It might be like I always say, Hori, you can like sometimes at the gym. Just because I can bench 60 kilograms doesn't mean Hori, you benching 20 kilograms doesn't hurt you as much as 60 hurts me. Because it's all relative to strength, right? And sometimes that toe injury to your strength is more destructive than a heart wound to me.
To you.
So it's you can't just look at it from the outside and say this is what it is.
Yeah. So if you're not in the arena, you've got no right to be critical.
I mean, you can, but like, just know, Hore, you are causing the problem. You are being more
part
of the problem than the solution.
Yeah, and thank you to Solal once again for sponsoring this podcast and making sure that we are having these important conversations.
Yeah, these conversations wouldn't be possible without them.
So I also advise that you check out some of the links we have shared, some articles, and try their supplements. They could help with burnout, with stress, with anxiety. I was talking to Dr. G today about burnout, which is very common amongst young people like me, and we were talking about the symptoms. I can definitely tell that my body is saying ding, 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 and it's a good time to start taking supplements for burnout, but most importantly, to make time for rest, acknowledge, accept, and respect my body.
I didn't take my vitamins. If I took my vitamins, I would have been fine.
You're just like me.
Boom is out here glowing, looking as pretty as ever. Baby, stress. Oh my gosh.
It's everything. I've always had the stress.
No, I've never seen it.
Yeah, I'm a doida.
What is it?
I'm a doida.
Is it kinky control?
Wow.
It's got such a nice texture.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
Guys.
Please share.
This is our love story. This is our journey.